you everybody for joining me. It will be a very interesting program tonight for anyone who has dabbled even a little bit in Louisiana genealogy research. You know that it can be a little confusing sometimes compared to other states, but sometimes there's some things that are the same as other states. So we'll kind of get into all of that. And as Allison said, I am from Louisiana, grew up there, and this is definitely a subject that is important to me. And I am someone who is still learning, as we all are. It's definitely a lifelong learning experience when doing genealogy research. So let's hop on in. Okay, so this is what we're going to kind of go over tonight. This is our game plan, so to speak. We're going to talk a little bit about vital records, you know, where to find those births, deaths, and marriages, probate, which is also called succession records, and some of the interesting, specifically Louisiana quirky things about them that I think some of you would really love. We'll talk a little bit about colonial censuses, just because there are some that do still exist that you can find out there. And that is really great for those of you who are able to get back to the colonial period. We will also discuss maps. For anyone who has attended a program I've given before, you might know that I love maps, or if you've ever come into the Genealogy Center and spoken to me before, you'll know that I love maps. So we'll talk a little bit about maps and how they're actually really important for Louisiana research. We will talk about cemetery records and newspapers. Immigration and migration, we'll get into that a little bit. And then we'll get into our local resources. Your local resources are going to be a really, really, really important thing to utilize, right? And we'll talk about what resources do we have for Louisiana research here at the Genealogy Center. A lot of people don't seem to realize that even in Fort Wayne, Indiana, we do have resources that you might be able to utilize. And towards the end, I am going to show you guys a little surprise, right? So this is a first glimpse of something that will be live, hopefully very soon. So, vital records, right? In Louisiana, birth and death records are not considered public records. So at the very bottom bullet point, I said, keep in mind that Louisiana is considered a closed record state. So what that means is that for births and deaths, you can access them, you can easily obtain them from the Louisiana Secretary of State's office for if it's over 100 years for births. Deaths is less than 50 years old. It can only be obtained by the relatives or descendants. So I'm probably not explaining this very well, but essentially in Louisiana, you're not going to have birth or death records, so to speak, for the entire state. So that's because the registration didn't begin until 1918. So before that, Orleans Parish was the only parish that mandated birth and death registration. So you can get those from, like I said, the Louisiana Secretary of State's office, which I have links to a lot of these resources in tonight's handout. You can get your pre-1918 Orleans Parish births and deaths. You can get your post-1918 state registration. So that's for your parishes, also counties in other states. That's what they call it in other states. You can get your post-1918 state registrations from the Louisiana Secretary of State's office, and Orleans Parish marriages from 1870 to 1970. The reason why it's a little bit easier to get more recent marriage records is because marriage records are considered public. So the rules about only obtaining a birth certificate if you're a descendant, if it's like less than 100 years old, and death certificates less than 50, that type of stuff doesn't apply for marriages. So let's talk a little bit about that Secretary of State's office website, right? So this is a screenshot of part of the page. So as you can see, if you go to their website, which as I said, I have a link to that in the handout, you can click on any of these three options. You can get your Orleans Parish marriage records from here. For other parishes, you can just go directly to the parish clerk's office and ask them, hey, do you have these? And if they have them, you can request it directly from them. So to show you guys an example, I decided to go into the death records. So I just did a basic search with the last name Bozier. So this would be my great grandmother, trying to find her death certificate. So just searching that last name, there was a very long list of Boziers. It's alphabetical. So you have Bozier, but then it's alphabetical by the first name. I was able to find her. It says that she died in 1918, has her age. And from here, if you click this blue print form, you can print the form and print it out, mail it, send them $5 if you don't want, unless you want it certified, then I believe it's 10. And you can get a copy in the mail. So you can't order them online exactly. You do have to mail them a check, but that's okay. This also says what parish she passed away in. That's what this column all the way on the right says. So that's what led me to believe this is probably the right person. So if you go to the next page, this is the death certificate. So here we have Cecilia Bozier. She died in Lucy, Louisiana, which is in St. John the Baptist Parish. She was 85 years old. It says place of burial or removal. The interesting thing is that I still have not been able to find her burial. So even with this information, you always have to keep in mind that sometimes the information is not correct. Sometimes it's just lacking information. In her case, she was quite elderly when she passed away, and the informant appeared to have been her doctor, not necessarily a family member. So this is something to think about for just any kind of genealogy research, regardless of what state. You might not always get everything you possibly want out of a record, but you can still try to get a little bit of breadcrumbs out of it. So some of you are probably thinking, well, what do I do if my pre-1918 ancestors didn't live in Orleans Parish? What do I do now? Well, I do have a solution for you, or at least an option for you. Religious records and parish courthouses. So some parish courthouses, some parishes, I should say, did have some amount of death registers. It's not going to be uniform across the state because it wasn't a statewide mandate. So it's kind of sporadic whether or not like a parish death register would exist. So your kind of next bet, your best bet really is religious records. So when I say religious records, what do I mean? The first place you want to go is Catholic records. So you have kind of two big options for getting those records. There's the Archdiocese of New Orleans. So they have a 19-volume printed sacramental records, right? So this is kind of a typed abstract thing. It's going to span 8 civil parishes or counties in other states. That's going to include Orleans Parish, Jefferson, St. Bernard, Plaquemine, St. Charles, St. John the Baptist, St. Tammany, and Washington. So that printed 19-volume set, it only covers 1718 to 1830. Now, you also have the Diocese of Baton Rouge. So they're going to span 12 civil parishes, which I have all these listed here. Their printed records are 22 volumes. It spans from 1707 to 1900. I've found some really helpful things in there for various people in my family who would have lived in St. James Parish. If you find a record in there, you can then go to their website and request to see the original. The Archdiocese of New Orleans, they do not let you handle their sacramental records because they are trying to preserve them. They're not always in the best shape. So you can't just try to make an appointment at their archive and say, let me look through your sacramental records. They won't let you do that. everything has to be done by request. So if you are looking for a baptismal, marriage, burial record from them that's after 1830 or after 1900, you have to be able to give them a certain amount of information, which, let's see. This is from the Archdiocese of New Orleans. This is from their website. This is a lot of text for this slide, but basically, you must include the name of the church or the address of participants, particularly the bride. So that would be for marriages. You have to kind of include as much information as you can find, and that way they can find it. They can more easily find the record for you. This statement about cemetery records in general are not indexed. I do mention cemetery records later on in tonight's program. You can find indexes of cemetery records outside of the Archdiocese, usually within periodicals. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking for cemetery records. So there's a lot of information here. I include links in the handout to the Archdiocese of New Orleans and the Diocese of Baton Rouge, where you can find all of the information you need from them. This is a screenshot of the Diocese of Baton Rouge. I highly recommend, when going to this page, looking at the procedures for requesting genealogy, their access policy, the request form, because it has all this information about what they need from you in order to find the records you're looking for. So if you are someone like me who's looking for things that are after these end dates for the pertinent sacramental records, you will end up spending a lot of time trying to contact the Catholic Church to get those records. But those records are so juicy when you do find them. Now, for people who are not Catholic, right? There are ways of finding church records. These two guides are very, very helpful. We have them in our collection. I believe this one on the left, the Guide to Vital Statistic Records of Church Archives in Louisiana. So this is going to be Protestant churches. It's also going to be Jewish records as well. This is a WPA guide. This is broken down by parish. So I find it incredibly helpful if you do not believe that your ancestor was actually Catholic, right? I know that in Louisiana, before 1803, when the Louisiana Purchase happened, the only real church in Louisiana was Roman Catholic, the Roman Catholic Church. And that was because if you did not get married in the Catholic Church, if you did not baptize your children in the Catholic Church, it was not considered valid. Your marriages were invalid. That meant that your children would be considered illegitimate. So you actually couldn't, there was no legal standing to marriage contracts. So that changes after the Louisiana Purchase. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But after that, things changed. People started moving into the area that were not Catholic, right? So you can find those records in other places, but it will require contacting these local organizations. But don't forget to do that search on the local level. Try using Family Search. There are some pre-1918 marriage registers, as I said earlier, in parishes that are outside of Orleans Parish, but it's, like I said, it's not consistent. The Family Search catalog is a great place to start looking for those earlier marriage registers, as long as you're looking by the individual parishes. So if you're not finding what you're looking for, don't freak out, don't despair. The records might not be gone. Just call the parish courthouse and see what might be lurking in their attic, right? To kind of show you as an example of what I mean by searching the Family Search catalog, when you're on Family Search's homepage, instead of clicking search up here and clicking all categories or all records, click catalog instead, and then click place. And just for this example, I like to show you guys example for parishes outside of Orleans Parish, because, you know, Orleans Parish is going to have the largest amount of records. We do have family that didn't live in New Orleans, right? So this parish, St. John the Baptist, I just put St. John the Baptist, Louisiana. I like to see what's online first if I'm not actually down there. And this is a search result, so you have all these different options, right? And if you click on vital records, you'll see marriage licenses and records. I was looking for one in particular for my great-great uncle. Yeah, yes, it was great-great uncle. So I knew that he had to have gotten married sometime around 1900. I wasn't quite sure when. So I clicked on this one because this was the right date range. And from here, and this is what the record page looks like. If you scroll down, all you have to do is just find the year range you need, click on the camera, and then just flip through the pages until you find the right one. And I was actually able to find the right record. So we have my great-great uncle, Thomas Wood, married Laurencia Derensburg, and this is the record of their marriage. This was not something that I was able to find on Ancestry. This is not something that is searchable in Family Search. So not everything is going to come up when you just do a kind of an all category search. So definitely look in the Family Search catalog and see what you can find. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is probate / succession records. So these are going to function the same way that probate files do in other states. If a will exists, which surviving will is for early Louisiana, that's kind of sparse, kind of rare. If a will does exist, it will be filed with the succession. One of the really most important documents you'll find within a succession record is the family meeting. The reason why I say it's so important is because these family meetings, which are held after, you know, the person has passed away, it will list the names of friends, neighbors, family members. It includes the names of minor children, includes the names of deceased family members, while they're all trying to figure out how are they going to handle somebody's estate. If an individual had several daughters that were married, it will include the names of their spouses. The meeting record will also list the names of widows and the names of former spouses of the deceased. And if it's a woman, it will include their maiden name. So there's all this really juicy information in there. This record right here, this is just page 1 of 4. 1 of 4. So it has so much. I mean, I'm just glancing here. You see minor children, Caroline, George, John, Anna. These are things that you might not find in other states. So this is kind of a unique thing to Louisiana that I find really interesting. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, this is great and all, but how do I find this? A place to start is actually either Ancestry or Family Search again. So a good way to kind of just search specifically Louisiana wills and probate records is to click on the search button at the top of the Ancestry page and then go to the card catalog. If you just put in the keywords Louisiana probate, this is the first one that comes up. And it has almost 500,000 records in there. One thing I want to point out about this page on Ancestry, you can search in here, but as y'all know, you know, Louisiana names, especially if it is French, if it is German, or if it is like a Francicized German name, like Hadel, you're going to have variant spellings in here that can be kind of unusual. So sometimes the Ancestry algorithm might not pull it up. So if you want to just see, okay, what probate records / succession records exist for a specific parish on Ancestry, you can go to this box right here that says browse this collection, pick a parish, and just scroll through. And you can go page by page in Ancestry instead of doing this. So if you're searching and you're not having any luck and you really think that this individual would have had a will or a succession or something like that, and it's still not coming up, try as a last ditch effort browsing the collection. It might seem like a needle in a haystack, but I've actually found gold doing stuff like this. Again, family search, you can do it the same way that we talked about with finding those marriage records. So this is St. James Parish. If you click on probate records, loose papers and folders with index, this is 1807 to 1964. That's a good date range. So when you go to the record page, if you scroll down under film/digital notes, you have a nice index. So you click on this first camera, look at the index, see if you can find the right person, and then go to which folder number is the right one. So if it's not on Ancestry and it's not in Family Search, the next thing you have to do is contact the parish courthouse. You will all be very tired of hearing me say that by the end of this program. So next we'll talk a little bit about colonial censuses. So there are some colonial era censuses that do still exist. There have been, these are the three transcriptions of them that are really the best, in my opinion. They're pretty juicy. This one includes militia lists, so they're going to be kind of scattered, but when you compile them together like this, it's really great. This one in the middle, Louisiana Census Records Volume 1, this is actually part of a 3-volume set, and it has a couple of parishes per volume. I have links to all of these in the handout, links to our catalog and the full citation information for these under the resources in the Genealogy Center section of the handout. Maps. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about maps. This one in particular is from a really great resource called the Louisiana Digital Library, which is a consortium of digital material across many different archives and libraries. Maps can be really helpful for Louisiana genealogy research because the names of places change so often and the lines of parishes change. So for example, on this next slide, so this came from the Historical Atlas of Louisiana, which is a fantastic guidebook. I think it's maybe my new favorite guidebook. This is kind of a comparison showing the parish lines between 1806 and 1886. So the parishes get broken up a lot. So if you are looking for something and you can't seem to find a record, maybe it's in a different parish courthouse. So you can look at maps like this and see, okay, so if I know my ancestor lived in this one town, right, in this one time period, but I can't find any records, well, what parish was that in at that time? So you can kind of figure out some new ideas if you're stuck. Another thing that's really great about maps is, and this is a question that I've noticed a fair amount living up here in Indiana, was, okay, so I had an immigrant ancestor that came in through New Orleans and then they ended up in the Midwest. How do people do that? How do people travel? Looking at maps, you can get an idea of where people are going, what routes you're taking. Are they taking, the train? In 1915, you can see what train lines existed. And this is navigable waterways in 1890. A lot of people assume, oh, it's just the Mississippi River. It's not just the Mississippi River. So there are a lot of really great information you can pull out of using maps. So don't forget about your maps. Okay, cemetery records. So cemetery records, similar to other places, you can use Find a Grave, you can use Billing Graves. You can find a lot of stuff through both of those websites, which are free. There's also something called the Louisiana Gravestone Project. And as I said earlier, there are cemetery indexes that can be found in periodicals, but we'll talk more about periodicals towards the end, I promise. So let's take a minute and talk about the Louisiana Gravestone Project. This project is awesome. I mean, just within the past week, they had nearly 300 uploads just within the week. Sure, this isn't something as big as Find a Grave, but they're going to some of these really small cemeteries, these like family cemeteries, and photographing them. And a lot of cemeteries in Louisiana are disappearing due to the loss of land, really, to be quite honest. So this is a way to try to capture headstones that are disappearing due to natural disasters, weather, and all kinds of other stuff. So these are headstones that might not exist in 10 years. So this is a really, really great resource. To kind of show you an example, when using this, I like to browse by cemetery. So if we're using St. James Parish again as an example, cemeteries in St. James Parish, it just shows which ones are out there. This one for St. Joseph Cemetery is huge, has almost 4,000 headstones. And I like to kind of just go through individually and see who's there. And when you click on them, I forgot to include a screenshot of when you actually click on one of these, but it is alphabetical. So you can just go to the surname of the individual, find that person, and if you click on their name, it pulls up the headstone. So there's a lot of great resources out there that you can access beyond this kind of usual go-to of using Find a Grave or Billion Graves. So let's talk a little bit about immigration and migration. And the reason why I say migration as well is because when you're looking at passenger lists, sometimes it's just people passing through, people who might actually be living in another area of the country. They're going to Louisiana for one reason or another, and then they're going upriver later on. So that's why I like to say it's not just immigration. Family Search has a really great collection of passenger lists for New Orleans. The indexes are not complete for the Louisiana passenger list. Many passengers whose names appear on manifest are not found on the microfilm indexes. So that's something to keep in mind. Pre-1820 passenger lists, they are not really existent. Not really. They're pretty sparse, I believe, because these are the NARA ones. If you're looking for earlier ones, you would have to try to contact the New Orleans Public Library and see if they have some, but they wouldn't. From what I recall, after having a conversation about these with someone who works there, it's pretty sparse for pre-1820. But 1820 to 1945, that's a good time span. So to kind of show you an example, I just did a search for someone with the last name Hodges and actually came across this one passenger list, which I found particularly interesting. This is not your usual passenger list. Let's zoom in a little bit to get a closer look. So this is May 17th, 1945. We have 94 members of British Navy in transit to England via New York. And it has like the name of the lieutenant in charge. So this is something that you're going to find some really interesting stuff in passenger lists. We had a program actually on Tuesday about passenger lists and doing passenger list research. That program was recorded and will eventually turn up on our YouTube channel. But just to give you guys an idea, these passengers were sailing from Trinidad. So they went to Trinidad to New Orleans, and then from New Orleans to New York, and then they go to England. So you can kind of trace where people are going, but these are people who are not immigrants. They're just passing through. So if you're doing research about somebody who was in the British Navy during World War II, you might find records like this. You can also browse these images. So as I said earlier, they're not all indexed. So if you're not finding who you're looking for, you could just go in and look at it image by image. It is exhausting, but that's part of research. That's part of the fun, is staying up late when you have insomnia and looking at passenger lists. Maybe that's just me. I'm not sure. When you browse the images for that, it's broken up from 1820 to 1902 and 1903 to 1945. So that's something to keep in mind. It is not broken up by like May 1st to June 30th, 1900. It's not like that. So we're talking about a lot of images at once, but it's still doable. You just might have to devote a little bit of time into it. But that's like anything else though. Well, actually, I was incorrect. Sorry about that. I was thinking of a different set of family search film. Oh, let me go back. So yeah, you can do it, but again, even when you click like May 1st to June 23rd, it's a lot of images. So that's something that I want you guys to be aware of. So for earlier passenger lists, as I said, it's kind of sparse, but these publications are your best bets, right? So Louisiana Recruits, this has to do with this has to do with military recruitments. So that's from 1752 to 1758. There was a significant influx of people from the Canary Islands who would have come between 1778 and 1783. So this is like a history and a transcription of passenger lists. So these are going to be typed transcriptions. It's not like looking at original quote unquote passenger lists, but these are great. And the First Families in Louisiana is another really fantastic resource. All of these we have in our collection. The first one, the First Families of Louisiana, there is an index to it that we have, which makes things helpful. Okay, so newspapers. So for doing newspaper research, like looking for obituaries, the Louisiana Biography and Obituary Index from 1804 to 1972, it was created by the DAR, is a great resource. You can search, there is a way of searching through these instead of going through the card index, which can be found on Family Search. The New Orleans Public Library has actually made it into a database and has made it searchable. So to show you guys an example of how you can use that, in the next slide, I'll show you what the cards look like and how I found the actual obituaries. So to find some older newspapers, you can use the NOLA.com/Times-Picayune/Daily Picayune archive, which is on Newsbank. But there's also this incredible project, the Digitizing Louisiana Newspapers project. That is done through Chronicling America. They digitize issues from 128 newspaper titles, starting from 1836 to 1922. So this is a really great resource that's free because it's through Chronicling America. So this was that obituary card index thing that I mentioned. So this top one, this was for my great grandmother, Claudia Crump. It says here what newspaper. So this is the New Orleans item, the Times-Picayune, and the states. It has a date, what page number, what column, the date she passed away. I like how the obituary cards include what she would have been listed as in the obituary as Mrs. R. Roy J. Gonzalez, but includes me, Claudia Crump, on the obit card. And this is for my other great-grandmother, Joanna Hodges, who, when she passed away, she had remarried and was married to this man named Louis Brandt. So I took this information, went to the Times-Picayune archive on NOLA News Bank. This is something that you do have to pay for. You can pay for a single session. They have a couple of different options of paying. For me, I like to do like an unlimited 24-hour thing, find all the ones that I can find, and then cancel the subscription. That's what I do personally. And then, so it's something I only use when I need it. So after searching through there, I was able to find the obituaries. They're not particularly long. It's really just a death announcement. So this bottom one, Mrs. Joanna Brandt, 61 was how old she was, and said that she passed away at Truro Infirmary. And then Claudia C. Gonzalez, 43, and she passed away at home in her residence. So you can use these obituary cards to actually find the actual obituaries. It's very helpful. Local resources. I'm just naming a few here, but definitely reach out to your local libraries, right? Reach out to the parish libraries, see if they have any genealogy information. The New Orleans Public Library has a ton of resources. Their archivist actually gave a program for us a couple months ago, and we have a recording of that on YouTube. I highly recommend it because it's all about what they have in their library. The Amistad Research Center is fantastic for doing African-American research, and the Historical New Orleans Collection, and also the Louisiana Digital Library, as I mentioned earlier. That Louisiana Digital Library, I found some really great stuff in there. You have like these different collections about various things, like there's a Free People of Color collection where you'll find emancipations, you'll find deed records. Sometimes you'll find really great maps. And one map I found was actually an inheritance map where during that family meeting, they were divvying up the land and writing in who gets what. So you can find some really great stuff in this Louisiana Digital Library resource. All of these resources, including more of them, I've put links to them in the handout. But never be afraid to contact your local libraries, which brings me to the resources we have. So we have materials from, last I checked, every single parish in Louisiana. Some parishes we might have a little bit less than others, but we have a pretty decent collection of Louisiana materials. These 3 books are just books that just like a mere fraction of what we actually have. I just kind of wanted to include them. This Louisiana Letters book, this is actually correspondence reports and submissions sent to the minister of the Louisiana Territory when it was, a French colony still, back to the French administration. And you have like all these really interesting things in there about ordinary military things going on, things involving civilians, and it has a surname index in the back, which is helpful because you can coordinate the surname with the location of the person to figure out, oh, this is the person I'm actually looking for information about. It is in French, so that's something you do have to kind of grapple with, but it is a really, really great resource. Now, these 3, the State Snapshots, Family History Archives, the African American Gateway, these 3 are digital, so is Percy, which we'll get into in a moment, and they are free. These are free resources that you can access. So in a moment, I'm going to get off of this page and I'm going to go into our website and show you how to find these. But the Family History Archives, books that we have in our collection that are out of copyright, or if the copyright holder gave us permission to digitize it, you can find those digitized books in the Internet Archive or the Family Search Digital Library. And the state snapshots, this is just a very useful list of research guides and indexes to kind of get you started. It's definitely helpful to get you started if you're coming in here, but it's also a helpful list to get started with your research as well. Think of it kind of like a bibliography. So let me get out of this slide and I'll show you how to find these snapshots, the Family History Archives, and the African American Gateway. And then I want to show you a surprise about PERSI, the Periodical Source Index. So let's start with these state snapshots. So if you're on our homepage, which is genealogycenter.org, if you click the top of the page, click Pathfinders and click States, and then click Louisiana, you get this beautiful list. It's a beautiful 4-page list. Now let me go back. Now to find the Family History Archives and our digitized books, if you scroll down the page a little bit from our home page and click this purple button that says Family History Archives, you get to this page where you can either do Family Search Digital Library. You can just either search the whole thing or you can search specifically what we have. Either is up to you. And you can do the same thing with Internet Archive. So for example, just searching Louisiana, just kind of blanketly, we get almost 2,000 results. So this is a lot of material. Now, the last thing I want to show you before we get into your special surprise, which some of you are probably very anxious to hear about, is the African American Gateway. So if you go to the African American Gateway and then click US states and then go to Louisiana, this is a really, really great resource because it includes all these free websites, databases, all kinds of really great stuff, and a bibliography broken down by just kind of general African American materials for like the entire state. And then if you scroll down, keep going, it's broken down by parish. So highly recommend this if you are doing African American research, to check out the African American Gateway because it's such a great free resource to access. Now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, the Periodical Source Index. So I know some of you have probably used PERSI before, and you're familiar with seeing it as a part of our on-site databases that would live within Find My Past. Coming soon, PERSI will be hosted on our website within our free databases. Now, what I'm showing you is a demo. It is not live just yet. It will be live soon. And from here, you can do all kinds of great stuff. One of the really great things about our collection of Louisiana materials is the periodicals, because the Louisiana periodicals are fantastic. You can find so much in them that gives you clues on where to find some of these original records. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a location search, just so you can get an idea of what PERSI will look like soon. But I do want to say that after PERSI goes live, the new PERSI, I should say, after the new PERSI goes live, we will have a program dedicated solely on the periodical source index. We're not going to get into all of these wonderful buttons tonight. That will be for another program. So let's see what we have for Louisiana. So if we go to press that United States button, and then click Louisiana. If you want to see just kind of general Louisiana, what we have for the whole state, just leave county blank and click search. So from here, you'll see you have stuff broken down by category, right? So, and we have the number of articles per category. So African-American, 603. Cemeteries, I mentioned a couple of times that there are cemetery indexes out there. That's almost 3,000 articles about cemeteries. So if you click on one of these, you'll have the title of the article, abandoned cemetery, a lot of abandoned cemeteries. You have the name of the periodical, what volume, issue number, year, etc. What is the call number? So these are, for those who are not familiar with Percy, these are all periodicals in our collection. It is a massive database. It is a beautiful database that makes things really helpful for researchers. And it also includes the publisher in case you want to contact the publisher for any particular reason. You can search within this. You can also go to the bottom, search within the article titles. You can search for specific periodicals. So for example, so this periodical, Voyagers, this is put out by the German Acadian Coast Historical and Genealogical Society. This is a great periodical, by the way. I thoroughly enjoy Voyagers. They have a lot of really, really great articles and information there. So you can, if you're looking for things that are specific to this periodical, you can search like that. Now, if you want to, let's go back. Search by a specific parish, you can put in the county box the name of the parish. So to give you an example, I just put in Orleans Parish, and we can see all the various articles for Orleans Parish. So let's click on African American. So we have African American history notes, records online, the Amistad Research Center collection. So if you wanted to say search within the search results, let's try, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's try online. So African American Records Online, which is that one that I brought up a second ago. New Orleans Archdiocese Online Baptism and Marriage Records of Slaves. This is something that I didn't, until just now, realize even existed online. So you can search within these.